So you have 45 million in the bank right now, is that right? I would like to dynamically renegotiate my speaker agreement with you. You know, this is unusual. Often when you're an opening keynote, you end up sort of struggling to get started when you're supposed to. So it's pretty neat that you guys are so efficient that you get things going early. You know, it isn't often that when I come to speak that I get to really revel in this, right? Thank you. Thank you for what you do. I will tell you that writing books was bucket list territory for me. The fact that I got to do one was amazing. I always assumed everyone wanted to write a book. Then I talked to my wife and she looked at me and says, really? I would never want to write a book. The fact that I got to do it twice is just incredible. What I've come to realize though, and I think you guys need to take this home with you, because I'm guessing in the world of book manufacturing, it can feel a bit routine. Can feel like you know what you're doing, you do it, you do a good day's work, you produce a lot of books, whatever they happen to be, and it just feels normal. For me, what I realized after these came out was that this is my version of immortality. These things will live beyond me. There may be a day where perhaps a great-great-grandchild of mine finds out that great-great-grandpa actually wrote a book, and they will learn something about me, because your work can last for centuries, can't it? It's what you think about. It's what you focus your attention on. So I just want to, from the bottom of my heart, thank you for that. You should also know and be perhaps gratified in that 86% of my sales are physical books. Yeah. And you know, I'm in the tech industry. I run a software design and development firm called Menlo Innovations. That's what we do for a living, is we create software. So I'm going to guess that the majority of the books that are sold into my industry. And yet my industry still prefers physical books. I think 5 years ago when I was here with all of you, there was a sense of existential crisis for the book manufacturing business. Are we going to survive? Are we going to thrive? Will we ever be what we used to be? I get the feeling now, just talking with you last night, that you're in a better spot than you were 5 years ago. And that's neat, and you should be. So congratulations on that. So, yeah, as Kent and I were talking just before this, we talked about joy and what an unusual word this is in business. Psychologist Rollo May once famously stated that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. And I will tell you, when you release a business book to the world that has words like joy and love on the cover, I will tell you that is a non-conforming approach to business books. But my hope today is to inspire you on your own journey to joy. Tell you a little bit about my personal history. Am I too loud? It feels too loud to me. I think okay. Just sounds louder than I'm used to. So, I started out in this industry way back in 1971, this industry being the software industry. I wrote a 2-line program when I was just a kid programmer in a freshman in high school in Macomb County, Michigan. And that program clacked out on a roll of paper, because that's the way computers used to work back in those days. And it said, "Hi, Rich," because that's what I told it to do. And from that moment on, boom, I knew what I was going to do. By 1973, I typed all the major league players into the computer so my friends and I could play baseball in the cold Michigan winter months. Yep, you're looking at the guy who invented fantasy baseball. You know, I have to admit, I feel a little confused as to who to root for in the World Series right now, because you got an ex-Tiger on one side and an ex-Tiger on the other side on the pitching staffs between Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. I was a little disappointed that Max didn't get to pitch last night. But that program won an international programming contest and launched a career for me. The place that was supplying the computing power invited me to work for them. I couldn't believe people would pay me to do this thing I just love to do as a hobby. And it was a whopping $3 an hour back in those days. And I was hooked. I knew what I wanted to do the rest of my days. I kept working, but eventually went to the University of Michigan, got a couple of degrees in computer science and computer engineering, and in 1982, an official career was launched. And I will tell you, that was a very high inflection point for the software industry. That was the year the IBM PC came out, where we finally put to rest the story that either A, Ken Olsen and Digital Equipment Corporation, somebody you never heard of, somebody you won't remember, who said that we have at most a need for 4 computers on the planet, and Bill Gates, who suggested there might be one on every desktop. I think we know who won that argument. And the career took off. And I will tell you, the career that followed for me, I went from programmer in 1982 to vice president of R&D for a very high-flying public company in Ann Arbor, Michigan called Interface Systems. Our stock went from $2 a share to $80 almost overnight because of the internet bubble. And so I had everything the world measures as success. I had stock, I had title, I had authority, I had team size, I had paycheck. My parents were proud of me, my wife was happy with me, and yet there was a different line, and it looked like this, and I wanted out. I didn't want to be in the industry anymore. My heart was breaking for a career that I thought would carry me for a lifetime. I was actually contemplating an escape at this point. I wanted to get so far away from the tech industry, I was imagining I would start a canoe camp in the boundary waters of Minnesota. Yeah, the women always laugh the same, just like my wife does. She's like, honey, did you really think, we have 3 daughters, she said, did you really think the girls and I would follow you to the boundary waters? There will usually be at least one guy after my talk who pulls me aside and says, how far did you get with the business plan on the canoe camp idea? It sounds great. So what was going on? How could I have all that worldly success and yet my heart was breaking for this career that I loved, that I was passionate about, that I was well prepared for, and I was actually really good at? Well, in the software industry, perhaps you know this because your own companies have experienced it, software industry is chaos. Chaos is firefighting every single day, bugs galore, phones ringing off the hook with problems, long days, long nights, sometimes all-nighters. The term 24/7 was actually birthed in my industry. It was a work schedule and not 3 shifts, the same people. And I would come home after very long days. Usually the cold dinner was in the microwave. My wife would look at me and say, honey, you look really tired. Did you get a lot done today? And suddenly I realized, no, I got nothing done today. I worked really hard. I was busy from one end of the day to the other. I was running from fire to fire to fire to fire, and nothing done. And in the software industry, when you work in chaotic environments like that, negative things happen. Things go bump in the night, sometimes big things. The story I told in Joy Inc. was not my story, fortunately, but it was a story of chaos. Tired programmer made a simple server update error, and the Knight Capital Group New York Stock Exchange trading platform traded $7 billion worth of securities it wasn't supposed to in 45 minutes, costing Knight Capital Group $400 million in losses in 45 minutes. Would that be considered a negative event where you work? I mean, even BMI couldn't afford a negative event like that, right? And so when there are negative events like that, and there's an old phrase in the computing industry, to err is human, but to really follow things up requires a computer. There is usually an organizational response, and the organizational response in the software industry often looks like a big 3-ring binder. filled with templated documents, stage gates, committees, sign-offs, approvals, meeting cadence, all this kind of stuff. We give it a title. We love our acronyms in our industry, so we'll call it the SDLC, the Software Development Lifecycle Process. We have to put a police force in charge of it. We establish a project management office just to mind the forms in the book. And you go from chaos to full-blown bureaucracy. You go from the land of never getting anything done to, quite frankly, the land of never getting anything started. Because you're waiting, right? You're waiting for an approval, a sign-off, a meeting to happen, and so on. And yet in the software industry, things still have to happen. And so shadow groups form. You start placating the bureaucracy while operating in chaos simultaneously. And you start doing hallway project management, the land of just one more thing, just one more thing, just one more thing. And now you're operating in the worst form of this picture. You're operating in both simultaneously. And so eventually somebody wakes up and says, hey, wait a minute, let's back off the big process. Let's put together a small document just for little projects. We'll call it SDLC Light. Just a little stapled together form with a few committees, a few sign-offs, a few approvals. And yet even those meetings don't happen, and so eventually somebody says, fire the PMO, get rid of the process, we're lean or we're agile now or something like that. And usually all that means is we prefer chaos. Because chaos at least feels energized. It at least feels like we're doing stuff, even if we're not getting anything done. And this was my life. Back and forth it went. So that's what was going on down here. That's why I wanted out. Now, I can see a few of you leaning over and saying, who's he been talking to at our company? I wish my boss was here to hear this. Yeah, you can rent me if you want. But I will tell you, in that moment, in my mid-30s, when I was contemplating that canoe camp, my eternal optimist, or as my co-founder James likes to say, my infernal optimist kicked in. I realized I was stuck in a room full of manure and I was going to keep digging because I knew there was a pony in this room somewhere. And my journey out kind of led me back to your industry, authors and books. They became my teachers. But not books on technology, because I will tell you, creating great technology, while hard, is trivial compared to how do we organize human teams? How do we put people together the right way? And this goes well beyond the software industry, right? My story is one of technology and the chaos of the technology industry. But what I've learned is that these lessons are universal. And so the authors and books I were drawn to were books like Tom Peters' book, In Search of Excellence, Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization. Because quite frankly, if we're not learning all the time, we're falling behind. Heck, we're probably falling behind even if we are learning all the time. Peter Drucker's books on management. John Naisbitt's book, Megatrends, which predicted an interesting future. But in that book, what Naisbitt told us back in the 80s, that the greatest advancement in the 21st century where we are now will not occur because of technology, but because of a greater understanding of what it means to be human. And I think that's where we're at right now. We're beginning to realize that some of the technological stuff around us, even including ebooks, isn't working as well as we thought it would. You know, there have been studies lately where our brains are literally rewiring themselves because of all the social media stuff and how quickly we go through information. I was talking with another gentleman who, if you know about STEAM initiatives and STEM initiatives and all that sort of thing, he offered up a whole new perspective, you know, STEM being science, technology, engineering, math, which is taking over our schools. And some people, like I do, say we can't have great technology without the arts. And so we have STEAM initiatives to add the arts into that. But his point was we need STREAM initiatives. The R is for reading. Deep, comprehensive reading. The ability to read a book is actually being lost these days. Our cognitive ability to digest a book, and I think our ebooks are actually distracting us because how easy is it to just go off to another thing while you're reading a book? Kent and I were talking before this morning just about that feeling that you get when you curl up in front of the fireplace with a good book. And so all of these things were telling me there was a better way of doing things than was customary. I was determined to find it. And in 1999, based on a book I read and a video I saw, I had what Franz Johansson calls a click moment, where I knew where I was going to go. Because that whole journey from my 30s to my early 40s, I didn't know what I was looking for. I just knew I would know it when I saw it. And in 1999, that happened. I read a book by a guy named Kent Beck on something called extreme programming, which is not about programmers jumping off of cliffs with bungee cords or anything like that. It's just about a different way to organize a software team. Then I saw a video that Ted Koppel did on Nightline about an industrial design firm in California called IDEO. They watched them redesign the shopping cart in just 5 days and filmed it. And in 1999, as VP of R&D at Interface Systems, I reinvented that public company as not from the top, but a little bit closer to the middle. And over the next 2 years, took that public company to a new place. And I would probably still be there to this day, except in 2001, you might remember there was another inflection point in the software industry. Right? 1982, it went up. 2001, it went down. And in 2001, the California parent that had bought Interface Systems shuttered every remote office they had. They had to. Their stock went plummeting. I went home, told my wife I'd lost my job. She looked at me with tears in her eyes and said, "You're unemployed?" And I said, "No, honey, I'm an entrepreneur now." Hang on to that one, guys. It took her 6 months to figure out that entrepreneurship actually pays less than unemployment. And then we were profitable, and a few years ago, she looked at me. She actually works at Menlo. She says, "I always knew this thing would work out." I wonder. So, in 2001, I lost everything. Job, title, authority, paycheck, computer, parking spot, key to the front door, desk, team, everything. Save one thing. They could not take away what I had learned in those 2 years. And that is what we carried forward into Menlo Innovations, the company I now lead today. And what I had learned is there isn't a perfect setting down for bureaucracy. That's not what we should be seeking. What I learned is you can actually throw this picture away entirely. You can start from a completely different place. And you can focus on building a culture of joyful leadership within your organization that can carry your team, you and your team, to places you never imagined possible. And the metaphor I'm going to use is a metaphor of one of my hobbies, flying little airplanes. Haven't done it in a while, but still my heart is in that little plane. And what I want to do is equate the forces at work on a human organization, your businesses, your teams, inside of your companies, to that of the forces at work on a small aircraft, or any aircraft for that matter. You probably know enough about how aircraft work to know that there is this force called lift that gets the plane up off the ground. It's created by the camber on the wings. And there's a countervailing force, like most things in physics. There's that weight that holds us back. There's a force that pulls us forward, provided by a propeller-driven or jet engine. And there's a force that holds us back, drag. And unless we have more of a couple of these things and less of a couple of others, our aircraft will never get off the ground. So what's the equivalent in our human organizations? The lift of human energy of our teams, the things you can actually feel inside of your organization. The weight that holds us back is that weight of bureaucracy I talked about. The thrust that pulls us forward is the thrust of purpose. And then the drag that holds us back is the drag of fear. So what are some things we can do? Well, I will tell you, human energy is often driven by clarity. The ability to go to work and get meaningful things actually done. I don't know if you're checklist oriented by it the way I am, but when a Saturday morning arrives, my wife usually has a few things she wants me to do on the weekend, and I want to take care of those things for her. But if I already get 3 done, and I forgot to write them down, I'll literally go make the list, write them down just so I can cross them off because it feels so good, right? But that ability to actually get meaningful things done is so important. The weight that holds us back is meeting load. If you want to slow your organization down, if you want to suck the human energy out of your team, have lots and lots of meetings. Long meetings that go from one to another to another. I think there's certain organizations where from a certain level up, those people are literally human sacrifices to meetings, right? I mean, you've seen it, right? You're waiting outside the conference room door, and everybody's going like this. Come on, we got to get in there. And everybody's like, oh, wait, one more minute. And then people come out and they're like, see you later. I got to go to my next meeting. So I have lots of meetings. For goodness sakes, do not make any decisions in those meetings. And if perchance you happen to, by mistake, make a decision, do not act on that decision. And you will suck the life out of your team. Okay? The thrust of purpose should be externally focused, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. This is incredibly important. If we have a good sense of the purpose of organization and that it's externally focused, that the goal of our organization should be to serve others, we can get through some really tough times together. Because I will tell you that while I speak about joy, it is certainly the case that joy and happiness are not the same thing. Happiness is a momentary state of being. We can be happy a lot of the day, but if we're going to get hard work done well together, there is no way we can be happy every minute of every day without medication. And then the drag of fear, the micromanaging kind of fear, the fear that actually is used to try and motivate people. I will tell you, this is a key element of what I'm going to talk about today. There are things we should be afraid of, no doubt. Fear keeps us safe, doesn't it? We look both ways while crossing a street. That's important. That keeps us alive. But I'm talking about the fear that we often use to artificially motivate our team, right? I had a boss once, and I think most of us learned to manage others by watching the person who promoted us first, right? We imprint, we're like little managerial ducklings, when we pop out of our little managerial eggshell, we look around like, oh, there's my boss, I'll follow him or her. And I will tell you, the first boss I had, as much as he's still a friend of mine to this day, and I still golf with him and so on, I just could never work for him again. He taught me, if I lean over here, I hope I don't get too close to the speakers. He taught me how to lead with fear. Good morning. How's it going? What you working on? Awesome. How's that project going? Really not so well? Are you coming in this weekend? Awesome. Yeah, you're going to get it back on track then, right? Great. How's it going? Yeah. What you working on? Are you almost done? Are you coming in this week? Right? Can you not feel your blood pressure rising when I do that? Am I not good at this? Right? Tom Peters, who's now a good friend of mine, he wrote the foreword to my next book. He calls it management by walking around, and that's not what he was talking about. This is management by walking around and annoying people. And so, in fact, there was one point where he said, hey, Rich, if you find 2 people standing in a corridor talking to one another, just walk up to them and stand there. You don't have to say a thing. They'll get back to work. Which is hilarious, because I tell you, if you know anything about how Menlo works, we work in pairs, so I've actually institutionalized 2 people talking to one another. The other part that is often inside of organizations is the dreaded annual performance review. How many of you have that inside of your organizations? Yeah, most still do. Dr. Deming called this the most egregious tool American management has ever created, right? Because it's a really slow communication and feedback loop, isn't it? I'm going to tell you in December what you did wrong in January. Wouldn't it have been neat to tell you like 3 minutes after it happened rather than 12 months? But of course we have to keep a record. And then, I will tell you, if most annual performance reviews I ever led or I was ever part of, you walk in, and I'm pretty sure this is true for all humans. I don't think anyone ever went into their annual performance review thinking to themselves, yeah, this year I pretty much met expectations. No, everybody goes in saying, I tore the cover off the ball this year. This is my year. I can't wait to get into that. And then the boss pulls you in and says, well, Rich, only 3.7% of you this year can exceed expectations. And you exceeded expectations 5 years ago, so you're going to have to wait your turn, right? Like, yay. And of course, the difference between meets and exceed is usually about 0.0125% in your raise anyways, so you wonder what all the falderall is about anyways. But there are so many things we can do to drag out the fear in our team, and we need to avoid that as leaders. So how do we get our organizational aircraft off the ground? Well, I will tell you, we need less fear. We'll never get rid of all of it. We need less bureaucracy. We need more human energy. We need more purpose, and wait for it. If we actually do this, yay, we get off the ground every single day. Wouldn't that be neat? Now, there are other things we can do as leaders. Now, you probably didn't realize this was going to be a lesson in aerodynamics today. But if you ever look at an aircraft, just take a look at it front on sometime. You're going to see that the wings are not exactly 90 degrees to the fuselage. They're tipped up just a little bit, a couple of degrees. That makes all the difference. That angle is called the dihedral. Now, why is this important? Because what you don't realize if you're not familiar with aerodynamics is that when you're on a flight, either a small aircraft or a large one, and that plane goes like this, and your heart jumps up into your throat, and you're hoping that the pilot has everything under control, what you don't realize is the plane is actually designed to right itself because of that little angle. And there are those kind of effects, those kind of designs in the aircraft for all three dimensions, forward, backward, around the yaw dimension, and side to side. And with those little design additions, you get what's called positive stability inside of your aircraft. That means that the pilot doesn't actually have to pay attention to the little things. And what you're avoiding is the opposite, the catastrophic instability that can cause the plane to tumble to the earth. If you, like me, are reading with great interest what happened at Boeing in the 737 MAX, they fundamentally forgot this principle. And they tried to correct it with software. I often want to apologize to the whole world for what my industry has done to the rest of you, right? Many of you probably have things like ERP systems inside of your company that you thought would actually help you run your business better. Yeah. But if we design our systems properly, and I'm not talking about our software systems, I'm talking about all of our human systems with this idea of positive stability, we can actually create an organization that will often right itself without leadership input. And the beauty of this, of course, is it lessens the load on the leaders, just like this lessens the load on the pilots, so we can then deal with the actual things that we have to pay attention to. One more small lesson in aerodynamics is just too much fun to avoid, is there is that moment when you're rolling down the runway and the plane hits what's called takeoff speed. And in that moment, as soon as the airspeed indicator hits the exact right point, the pilot pulls back on the yoke just a little bit. It's a pretty effortless move. And it creates a new angle tilts the elevator down, tilts the nose up, and that angle has a great name for the purpose of this discussion. The pilot creates a positive attitude in the aircraft. And then, boom, off we go. Isn't that a delightful confluence of language? That if part of our leadership system should be to bring a positive attitude to work, because that positive attitude can be catchy, it can actually help our organizational aircraft get off the ground. The Wright brothers achieved powered flight in 1903. They were up against a fairly healthy competitor in Samuel Pierpont Langley. Wright brothers were a couple of guys running their bicycle business in Dayton, Ohio, and they used a lot of simple techniques, bless you, to get that aircraft off the ground. Langley was in Washington with 50 PhDs on his team and a tremendous amount of funding. But as soon as the Wright brothers succeeded where he had not been able to, he quit, which I found fascinating because there were so many other things to discover. So why would the Wright brothers keep going and Langley quit? I think it's a fundamental difference of purpose. Langley was trying to build an aircraft. The Wright brothers wanted to fly. Big difference. Now, shortly after that first powered flight, Orville Wright was interviewed. And he told the interviewer, man would never be able to build an aircraft that could carry more than 2 people. It just wasn't physically possible. For the weight and the drag and everything that would be required. 2 people, that's it. How do I know this? I read it in a book. I read it in a book on Orville Wright's life. I read it in a book on a 747 to London. 400 passengers, 50,000 gallons of fuel, all the baggage below, flying at 500 miles an hour at 35,000 feet in total creature comfort. The first 747 took off in 1969, a scant 21 years after Orville Wright had passed away. Almost in the context of his lifetime, this happened. And my point is, once we discover the relevant principles, either of an aircraft or human organization, we can achieve great things. We can lift that human energy of our team and we can fly to heights and distances that were previously unimaginable, even to the inventors. I will tell you, when I started Menlo in 2001, and this is a picture of a portion of my team, a picture inside of our organizational aircraft in downtown Ann Arbor, Michigan. If someone had asked me, Rich, what do you want to achieve? I probably would have told the equivalent of the 2 people in an aircraft story. I probably would have thought that's all that's possible. The way I'm sure I would have characterized it back in those days is, look, I'm tired of firefighting. I want to get firefighting down to maybe 1 a day. It'd be really neat if I could get firefighting down to 1 a day. If somebody had suggested to me that there was a 747 possible in my lifetime, I would have scoffed at them. If somebody had said, hey, Rich, I think maybe a fire a week would be a good goal, I'm like, oh, come on. Really? This is software after all. If somebody said, what about 1 a month? I'm like, are you crazy? If somebody said 1 a quarter, I don't think so. Somebody said, what if you could get it down to 1 a year? I'm like, that's just not possible. This is software. The last time my team remembers a true software emergency, 2004. Now, I will tell you, 6 years ago, 7 years ago, when I started saying that, when it had only been 7 or 8 or 9 years, and I would go out to the world and say, it's been 7, 8, 9 years since we experienced a true software emergency, my team would pull me aside and say, stop doing that. You're just tempting fate. But when you keep saying it year after year after year, well, the heck with fate. There must be something else going on here. There must be some relevant principles that we've discovered. And even if you think about the airline system that we have today and how safe it is, it's amazing what we've discovered there. So it is possible, once we discover those relevant principles, to get to those heights and distances that were previously unimaginable. So what are some key things to build a culture of joyful leadership? What can you take home with you? This is not meant to be an exhaustive list. This isn't meant to be a conclusive list. This is simply meant to get you thinking about what could you bring home from here to take back home with you when you start meeting with team members who are not here today. Well, I will tell you that first thing is start with that purpose. Understand what you believe and why you exist and what kind of results you're trying to bring to the world. And as I said in my earlier slide, focus that attention externally. This isn't about joy inside the room, although that's important. Happiness is even important. But the true kind of purposeful meaning in organization comes from looking outside ourselves. As the Arbinger Institute out in Salt Lake City talks about, an outward mindset. And I will tell you that the first big takeaway I want you to think about, worthy of writing down, is two simple questions. Easy to ask, not necessarily easy to answer. Who do you serve? And what would delight look like for them? And I'm going to take the normal stakeholders off the table as you consider that homework assignment. Take off customers, employees, and shareholders. Of course you have to serve them. If you don't serve your customers, you go to business. You don't serve your employees, nobody will do the work. If you don't serve your shareholders, you won't have the capital to invest in new equipment and expansion. But that's still inwardly focused. I want you to look past those normal stakeholders. At Menlo, we're a contract software design and development firm. That's what we do for a living. People come to us and ask us to build software for their business. But the people we look at, where we focus our attention, are the end users of the software. People we will never meet, people who don't pay us for what we do, but we want to bring them delight. You know, our industry has learned to call the people we serve. You've heard this term, heck, you've probably called it yourself. We call the people we serve stupid users. Then we write dummies books for those people just to remind you exactly what we think about you, right? I mean, what other industry could get away for its entire history calling the people they serve stupid? Seriously. We didn't want that. We had to invent something entirely new to get past this hump in our thinking. We had to invent a practice at Menlo we call high-tech anthropology. I'll say that one more time. It's a weird word. It's a weird phrase, high-tech anthropology. What is anthropology? It's the study of people in their native environment. Most software systems don't even consider real users. Programmers sit around in a whiteboard conference room saying, I know how it should work. I know how users think. No, you don't. You're a programmer. Stop. Go learn their vocabulary, their workflow, their systems, their goals as human beings, and build that into your software design. Software regularly tortures people. Heck, we were trying to hide some of my slides so I could keep it within the right time frame. I have 2 degrees in computer science and computer engineering. I present publicly for a living. I run a software firm, and we couldn't figure out how to get PowerPoint to work in the back corner of the room without 3 people chiming in a YouTube video. I mean, think about it. Like, how hard can this be? I just wanted to hide a few slides. That's it. I could give you 100 examples, and you wouldn't even ever be able to look at the world the same, right? Think of your television remote, right? The cable remote. You know, do you ever come home at night after a long day and you just want to turn on the television, so you turn on the TV and you want to find out what the lineup is, and you press another button to see what the lineup is, and you're like, what's wrong? Why is it not working? No, battery's fine. Why is it not working? Not on cable. What button am I pushing right now? No, not the TV. The button I'm pushing right now. What's it called? Guide, yeah. Why do they call it guide? Anybody know why you call it guide? Anybody have an idea? TV guide, yeah. Why do I have to be in cable mode? Why can't I be in TV mode to get the TV guide? You see, if you understood the architecture of the system, if you learned to think like me, this would all make sense. Why do I have to learn to think like a programmer when I just want to use my television? I used to give Comcast crap over this, and then they changed their system, and it's amazing now. You can actually just talk to it. I want to watch football. And it works every single time. They've done a great job. But all the other ones suck. So I can, right? And you all know it too. I mean, you're like, you're doing the sign of the cross before I'm praying that my television will work this time, right? Stupid chip reading credit card machines, right? Do I slide or insert? And there's this little blue chevron that's like, slide me, slide me, slide me. So you slide. Oh, I'm sorry, it's chip insert, sir. Then why is the little blue arrows going down? And then you put it in, and oh, you didn't put it in far enough. Okay. Oh, no, you have to pull it out and put it back. Are you kidding me, right? And then it blinks at you, doesn't it? And what is it blinking? Do not to remove card, do not remove card, do not remove card. And then it blinks one more time, remove card, but you didn't see that because all it was doing is blinking. And then if you don't take it out fast enough, what does it do? It yells at you. It says, you're a stupid user, and I'm gonna let everybody in line know it. I've been using credit cards for 40 years, and now they're painful. They had done brain MRIs once a time where using a credit card actually registered as pleasure. ATM's neutral and cash painful. You can use that in your financial life to keep yourself on track if you remember that. I once had this discussion about who do you serve and what would delight look like for them with a life insurance company. And I said, who do you serve? And their immediate answer, which is obvious, was their policyholders. And I said, I get it. But I'm pretty sure when your product is most useful, those people aren't on the planet anymore. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, yeah, it's the beneficiaries. And I was describing this. And there was a woman in the class. This is a big life insurance company. We offer classes and everything we do. And tears started rolling down her face. And I said, what's going on? She says, well, those people you're describing, that we should be prepared to deliver empathy, compassion, a shoulder to cry on, execution, organization, a listening ear, because they just lost someone in their lives who was dear enough to them, they thought to protect them with a life insurance policy. She said, Rich, we just outsourced our claims department to an offshore firm with instructions prevent fraud. So those people you're talking about, we're going to first treat like criminals before we get to the compassion part. And they were convicted that they'd done something horribly wrong in terms of the purpose of their organization. So I can't tell you who you serve and what would delight look like for them, but let me just give you a hint. You might serve authors. People who don't pay you for what you do, people you may never meet. But the fact that I can change lives in the world, I have had people come up to me and tell me, literally to my face, Rich, I read your books and it saved my life, and I think they were serious. I get those moments because of the work that you do. Start with purpose. If you want to dismantle the bureaucracy in your organization, stop creating bosses everywhere. I'm not saying bosses are bad and leadership is good, because we've had good examples and bad examples of those in our careers wherever we go. But I will tell you that leadership can occur anywhere. And it doesn't need a title, and it doesn't need authority, and it doesn't need a corner office with a big window. If we can promote leaders within our team, and I don't mean promote like give them a raise, I just simply mean support them as they're doing their work of leadership within the organization, you will start to change lives within your team, both that of the leader and the people they are leading. Leaders influence. Bosses have that card that we never liked as kids. You have to do it because I told you so. Leaders have to lead. Pursue systems, not bureaucracy. Systems thinking is very important. I can't tell you enough how much this can mean to make a difference inside of your organizations. If we produce systems in our organizations that have short communication and feedback loops, unlike the dreaded annual performance review I discussed earlier, we can create positive stability in an organization, and the workload of the hierarchy is lessened. We will need less meetings. We will need less authority inside the organization. Care for your team. And I don't mean just the people who work for you, I mean care for the leaders as well. Work is hard. We have a lot of other things going on in our lives. Everybody has a story at home too. Something important, something troubling that's going on in their own family lives. Think about how we want to care for each other within the workplace in consideration of the other things that are going on in our lives. We work in pairs at Menlo, 2 people, 1 computer, working side by side all day long, and the pairs switch every 5 days. This is an interesting construct inside of a software firm, right? A lot of people wonder, how did we corner the market on extroverted programmers? But we didn't. Menlo is filled with introverted people. But what we discovered was that introverts don't prefer sensory deprivation and isolation like Dilbert would suggest. Right? Let's put our introverted programmers inside of these sensory deprivation chambers, turn the lights down low, keep it library quiet, let them put headphones on, let them come in at weird hours so they don't overlap with other humans. And then later lament that they lack interpersonal skills. Shocking, who knew, right? That you might actually have to practice these things if they don't come naturally to you. But you can imagine in a tight working environment like that, where people are working shoulder to shoulder, sharing a single keyboard and a mouse all day long, there might be conflict. There might be argument. There might be hurt feelings along the way. So we have to teach our team, how do you care for one another in that environment? And I will tell you that the simple construct we use when you're having conflict with another person is step back from the conflict, step back from the task, even step back from the relationship at work, and check in with them first as a human being. Simply look them in the eye and say, are you okay? Is there anything troubling you in your life today that I could help with? Now, they might be too private to share that. That's okay. You got to learn to respect those boundaries too. But they might open up to you about something that happened outside of work. Perhaps they buried a pet the day before. Perhaps they got a phone call about a cancer diagnosis for a loved one. These might affect our ability to be good workers at work. And then the other thing we tell the team is, if the other person says, no, I'm fine, then turn it into you. Ask them, is there anything I did to upset you yesterday? Don't assume it's the other person. How often when we get in conflict, we think they did it to us. But we said something stupid. We said something that lit a fuse in their brain. But by opening up that vulnerable path, we might actually get past the things that are troubling us. But figure out how to care for the people who work for you, you work for, and the people who work around you. Learn together. I can't emphasize this enough. This is what really captivated me by Peter Senge's book, The Fifth Discipline, on the art and practice of building a learning organization. With our paired construct, 2 people working side by side together and switching the pairs every 5 days, we get to a very different point of learning inside of our organization. And then ultimately, storytelling. Again, I think this is something that connects all of us together. You know, stories are such an important part of leadership. The ability to tell a story is what allows us to connect heart to mind, body to spirit, concept to reality. Stories are, strategy, culture for breakfast. Storytelling is what sets the table. If we can get to this point where we can communicate effectively through story, we can really move a team forward. It's so much better than a poster on a wall or a rah-rah speech once a year from the leader. Stories and stories curated and retold over and over again. Stories of pain, stories of suffering, stories of victory and success. All of these stories can be so important to maintaining our culture. And then the question is where to start. I will tell you, there are those moments where people hear me speak and they will say, man, I wish my boss was here. I wish there was somebody else in an organization who heard what you said today, Rich. But I will tell you, there's a different place to start this journey. And I learned it from an 8-year-old, my 8-year-old. Now that's not her and that's not me. Okay, just to be clear, those are just like stock photo pictures. But at 8 years old, my daughter had this program at her school called Take Your Daughter to Work Day or Take Your Child to Work Day. And I was a newly minted VP, and I took her into the office with me. Now, can you imagine a more boring day for an 8-year-old than to watch a VP work all day? Oh, my dad does email. I'm so proud of him. Yeah, my dad answers phone calls with people yelling in the phone all day long. So she wisely brought coloring books, crayons, stickers, and sat at my task table all day watching her dad, the VP, work. And at the end of the day, I thought I better ask her, just because her teacher will the next day anyway. So I said, so Sarah, how was your day? What did you learn? She said, what I learned, Dad, is you're really important here. Like, what? What do you mean? She said, I saw that nobody here can make a decision without asking you first. She said, they were lined up all day long. You were like answer man here. Out of the mouths of babes, right? Because what I realized in that moment, it convicted me. I had built an organization and team that couldn't move faster than me. And the only way to scale a hero-based organization is scale the heroes. The only way to scale the heroes is overtime. And I realized at that moment that I was going to miss the best years of being a dad if I continued on this path, and I didn't want that. So I made dramatic changes in my life based on that wisdom of an 8-year-old. Now get it. People look at me and they say, Rich, you were the VP, you're the CEO now. If we want to work on something bigger than ourselves, you got to be at the top. You can be the President of the United States calling us to the moon and back. Yeah, there are those moments where somebody at the top can make a big difference, can move a nation to create the Peace Corps or get to the moon and back, or just inspire us in ways that we never imagined possible. But I want to take it to a different place, a place where anybody on your team can have an impact. Now, if you ever fly through Detroit Metro Airport, you may recognize that this is the McDonald's in the McNamara terminal for Delta Airlines. And I admit, I have a weakness. It's a quarter pounder with cheese, large fry, Coca-Cola. Usually here. I usually don't get it anywhere else but here. Even that's not universally true, but this is my weak moment. If I'm in a hurry, I run in here, and let me tell you, this place is typically busy as can be. And they're hustling and they're moving. And every time I was there was this guy, Mike, worked for McDonald's, older guy, and I'd be sitting at my table and I'd just watch him. And he was hustling from table to table, cleaning stuff up that people left behind, cleaning the crumbs off the table, just moving. I was amazed at his personal energy, given how old he was. And every time he got near me, he'd lean in. And I tell you, this happened many times. He'd just say, how's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? I'm like, who is this guy? Right? This is like one of the most impersonal places on the planet, inside of one of the most impersonal places on the planet, right? And this guy every single time is doing this. And he does it with enthusiasm. It didn't feel routine. And I thought, man, they were lucky to have him. And then one time he was off shift. And one time there was this kid, this 16-year-old kid, who's pulling a sled full of garbage out of the back of the restaurant. And he's pulling it through, he's heading off to the dumpster, just this young kid. And he leans in, he goes, how's it going? Have a safe flight. Can I get you anything? Can I get you a napkin? I'm like, what is going on at this McDonald's, right? So I pulled the manager aside and I thanked him, and he thanked me for noticing. He said, Rich, this is a highly competitive place. That little extra bit of customer service we think might actually help us succeed here. My point to this story is this. I'm pretty sure the manager of that McDonald's didn't call up corporate and say, hey, could we form a committee to write a policy about doling out kindness and napkins? No, he just went and did it. The point is, you can be the change you want to see in the world. You can start from anywhere. I don't know. At first I thought it was just Mike. Then maybe Mike and his kid. Turns out it was this manager. I don't even know if it survives past the manager. But the point is, you can start from where you are. And the way to start, my suggestion, to fight the fear and embrace the change that you need to change is simply this: run the experiment. I get it. You come here, you hear a bunch of speakers, maybe you read my book or others that you've gotten, and you're inspired. You're inspired to change yourself. But you go back to your workplace, even if you're the top guy or gal in your organization, and you say, I got this great idea. And the people on the other side of the equation who haven't heard what you heard, haven't read what you've read, haven't seen what you saw, haven't had the conversations you've had with others, and they say, that won't work here. That's against policy. We'd have to form a committee. We've tried that before. It didn't work then, it won't work now. I mean, am I right? Right? And in that moment, right, you just give up because you got emails to run to, you got emails to attend. You're busy. And so the idea dies. I want to arm you with one simple response in that moment. Look them in the eye and say, I get it, but let's try something. Let's take action versus take a meeting. Right? Let's see what happens. If it doesn't work, kill it. Just change, whatever, but let's move forward. Let's run the experiment. Now in our world, let me tell you how this played out. Tracy had little Maggie 12 years ago. She'd taken her maternity leave and she was ready to come back to work. She came to me and she said, hey Rich, I'm ready to come back. I'm excited to join this new project that's going on, but the trouble is that the daycare we plan to use is full and grandparents live too far away to help. And she didn't know what to do. And now I will tell you in that moment, there was a screaming match in my brain. One that Tracy never heard. You know what those are like, dark voice, bright voice. Dark voice said, don't you dare say what you're about to say. HR will shoot you, right? The lawyers will freak, the insurance policy will go through the roof. Bright voice said, it's your company, you can do whatever you want. You don't even have an HR department. Now, if there's anybody in HR in the room, I want to stick up for HR people because I don't believe anyone ever got an HR with any other focus than the humans. No one got an HR to torture people with forms, bureaucracy, and regulation and compliance, I can assure you. At least they've been my best friends in a lot of the changes I've made in my life. But I looked at Tracy and I said, bring her in. She's like, what do you mean? I said, bring her into work. She said, all day? I said, sure. She said, every day? I said, why not? Now, she was testing me to see if I thought this through. No, I hadn't. Okay? She looked around the big open room, because this was not, we're going to build a daycare for Maggie. No, this was the baby's going to be with the parent all day, right? That, by the way, changes the risk factor by a ton. Lawyers and the insurance people, if they're going to be with the parent, that's fine then. She looked around the big room that is Menlo. She said, where will I put her? I said, Tracy, she's 3 months old. She's not going anywhere. Just put her on the floor, put her in the front pack. Float her in a bassinet or something like that, And she said, what if she makes a fuss? I said, here it's like a noisy restaurant. You'll never hear it. She said, come on, Rich, you've raised 3 girls. What if she makes that big baby fuss? It'll destroy the ambiance of the whole space. I said, Tracy, you're the mom. I trust you. Let's run the experiment. We'll work. If something goes wrong, we'll work it out together. Right? Now, isn't she adorable? Funny thing is, that's not little Maggie. That is actually Ellie. Ellie's Menlo baby number 8. Now, when you run experiments, especially if they involve little humans, expect the unexpected. Little Ellie learned to pair program. Ellie went to design meetings. We learned to pair the babies. We found out that the baby experiment works for introverts and for extroverts. I'll let you decide which is which. This is Flynn and Josiah, Menlo babies number 23 and 24 in the last 12 years. This has been an awesome experiment. The babies come in all day, every day, for at least 3 or 4 or 5 months, depending on the parent's desire. It has been awesome. Then we found out something really cool. We found out that our customers behave better when you bring a baby to a meeting. They don't yell at you, they don't swear at you, they think you're awesome. So this was available both to moms and dads. This is John with little Henry. This has been an amazing experiment for us. This is Henry Learn to Manage. How's it going? What you working on? Are you coming in this weekend? Got your TPS report done? Yeah. Yes, we've always had dogs at Menlo, and that's not the point of this slide. This is the point of opportunity that exists for all of you. And it is simply this. The gentleman in the orange shirt, Michael, is our customer. Our customers, if they're nearby, come in for a weekly show and tell. That's an update on how their project's doing, and they get to discuss with our team what progress have we made in the last 5 days. Remember, short communication and feedback loops keep you on track. But he called me ahead of this meeting and he said, "Hey, Rich, do you mind if I bring Buster with me to the meeting today, to the show and tell?" And I said, "Sure, who's Buster?" He says, "My Great Dane." Oh my. Buster greeted me at the front door by putting his paws on my shoulders. I'm 6'5". His head was here. Gentle giant of a dog, but here's the point of this story. And the point of both stories is this isn't about the dogs and babies, even though this is what you will remember. The point is about run the experiment. And the opportunity that existed here was Michael knew we were dog friendly, so he brought his dog in. He couldn't bring his dog in where he worked. Believe me, if he knew what he did for a living, it would not be appropriate. Just like babies probably won't be appropriate inside of a book manufacturing facility. I'm just guessing, okay? You probably don't want to have a baby in a front pack while by the guy running the web press or something like that, okay? But the point was when Michael interacted with us, he wanted to be more like us. And that is actually the opportunity we have in the world, is if we create a great enough culture within our organizations, people in the world will want to be more like us when they interact with us. And that can occur company to company. That can occur within a department, within a larger organization. So again, start where you are, run the experiment, be the example you want to see in the world. As I said earlier, Rollo May told us that the opposite of courage is not cowardice, but conformity. I hope in the time you have together today, you take some non-conforming ideas back home with you and change the world. Thank you very much. And I think I've got 10 minutes for questions. The way that works is you just go like this, and then I call in.
Rich, you ended with a slide with a Viking helmet, and it's on the cover of your book. What's the significance of that?
Yeah, so we hate meetings at Menlo. We think they're mind-numbing, spirit-sucking, energy-draining devices of management, so the ones we have we keep short, and the Viking helmet is actually a talking stick. So at 10 o'clock every morning, we have a daily stand-up meeting. It's called by a dartboard on the wall. How can a dartboard call a stand-up meeting? Dartboard has an alarm clock. Why does a dartboard have an alarm clock? We have no idea. Time for darts. But the alarm goes off at 10 o'clock in the morning, and everybody in the room stands up, moves to a circle, and we have a daily stand-up meeting with 50, 60, or 70 people in the room. The two-horned plastic Viking helmet becomes the talking stick because we work in pairs, we report out in pairs, and having a two-handled token is actually really valuable. And it just moves around the circle, and everybody who has the Viking helmet reports out their name, because it's nice to introduce ourselves to everyone. They report out what they're working on and where they need help, and then it moves on to the next people. So yeah, it's become the iconic symbol of Menlo. Yep.
Talked about trying to figure out how to delight typical stakeholders, and I guess you talked about users of software. How did your team sort of work through figuring out what delighted users of software?
Yeah, so what we understand, had come to understand, is that, as I said, programmers sitting in whiteboarded conference rooms imagining how software should work for end users probably isn't the right strategy. Because programmers know how computers work, and quite frankly, users don't care how computers work, right? They just don't. They just want it to do a job for them. And so what our team does is they go out into the world and they observe people doing their work. And I'll just give a brief example. We did a handheld touchscreen device for diesel motor mechanics who fix 18-wheeler rigs. The first visit, now our customer, they're public in their relationship with us, so I can mention them, is Snap-on Tools Corporation. Snap-on creates these diesel motor diagnostic tools. They engaged us to design the new user experience for their latest device. And they had designed the hardware. We weren't in charge of the hardware, and it was going to be this handheld device, touchscreen. And so we went out into the world and we observed people doing this work in their native environment. And the first guy we met, Bubba, was at the Ann Arbor Transit Authority working on buses. And the first thing he did as we went out into the bay to see him work was he pulled on a pair of rubber gloves to do his work. Yeah. And our anthropologist noted Bubba wears rubber gloves when he works. They didn't even understand at that moment the implications of the rubber gloves for the touchscreen device. They brought that information back amongst a whole bunch of other things. And our engineering team said, well, that's not going to work. He's going to have to take his glove off every time he goes to use the device. And our anthropologist said, oh, you haven't met Bubba, right? We found out later Bubba sabotages these pieces of techno garbage, as he likes to call them, with a ball-peen hammer. And so, we're stuck. We're like 2 hours into this domain. We knew nothing about diesel motor diagnostic at this point. It's kind of the point of high-tech anthropology, is going with sort of beginner's mind. So you see everything, because a lot of times, if you know how things work, you don't see the obvious. And so for us, we saw the rubber gloves. We called up our customer and said, hey guys, do you know do you know your users wear rubber gloves when they work? Dead silence. One of their engineers said, they do? And one of their other engineers said, man, you guys are so lucky. I said, well, why? They said, well, you get to meet our end users. He says, I've been here 12 years. I've never met one. If you ever wonder why high-tech products frustrate you, it's because the programmers are introverted and they're in sensory deprivation chambers with headphones on, and we let them come at weird hours and never overlap with other humans, so we had to inject something brand new. And so Snap-on hadn't been done with the hardware. They switched to a pressure-sensitive touchscreen, which literally saved that product in the marketplace. That's an example of what the anthropologists do. There's a whole bunch of other stuff that they do, but the idea is go out and learn from the world. As the lean community would talk about, go to the Gemba, go to where the work is actually done. That's where you're going to really learn things. And of course, by building relationships with the people you intend to serve, you actually learn a lot about how they work, what their goals are as human beings. We learned about the people who did that work that they just wanted to bring home a paycheck and not worry about money. Those are really important goals. So the device shouldn't be fancy schmancy. You should just let them get their work done. Yep.
How does your company sell?
Boy, that's a great question. We don't have a traditional sales force. What we do is we offer tours. You're all welcome to come. We get about 3,000 people a year come from all over the planet just to see how'd your organizational aircraft get built to achieve the results you've achieved. And out of those thousands of people who come here, word of mouth drives business to us. So it often finds us, which is kind of a neat way. We try and, like every contact with people, we're trying to deliver value, just like I am today with you, writing the books. I mean, this whole idea of can we change lives with the work that we do, no matter what the contact point is. Okay, this side of the group is done. I need something from the middle. Or over here, I can give you guys a little chance too. No, really, yeah. I'll take questions from over here. This is a more lively, energized audience over here. Yes?
So Rich, your work environment sounds so appealing, but what about?
Not for everybody.
Right.
It's one of those vilified open office environments you hear about, right? Kind Fast Company magazine calls an idea born in the mind of Satan in the deepest caverns of hell, right?
Basically, my question. I mean,
Yeah.
Are you getting employees and leaders that come to you because they want that environment? I mean, I can imagine you're getting a lot of people that come from more conforming environments. And
Yeah.
How do you bring them in, and keep them?
If you want to create an intentional culture, which we did, you have to look at all of your HR practices, your standard HR practices. How do you recruit? How do you interview? How do you select? How do you onboard, for example? And so in our world, because we work in pairs in a big open and collaborative environment, you might guess, even if it looks fun, even if it looks interesting, you may get in and go, where's my cube? And like, not here. We don't have any of those. I sit out in the room with everybody else. There's no corner office for the CEO. We're all out in the room with each other. And almost no one who ever came to work for Menlo is coming from that kind of environment. So it's different, right? I mean, we get the folks coming out of the sensory deprivation chambers. So what we do is we rework to the interview process to not ask questions and to not look at resumes. Okay, so our interview process is different. We don't look at resumes and we don't ask questions.
What do you do?
Thank you. We make it an experience. We make it an experiential interview. We make it an audition. Okay, so this would, I'd say there's like 50 or 60 people in the room. This would be about the limit of what we call an extreme interview. But we can invite all of you in for one interview, all at the same time. And then what we do, because what we were trying to jettison, you might guess that I'm just a little sarcastic about the ways I used to do things. I used to say that my interviewing style was two people sitting across the table lying to each other for a couple of hours. That was my standard interview. You know, Jim, are you a people person? Yeah. Do you like people? You know, if you were a day of the week, what day would you be, right? Yeah, you know, all those stupid questions we dream up, you know. Well, I had one person tell me once, Saturday morning. I'm like, really, Saturday morning? Tell me more about Saturday. All of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I gave them the wrong answer, right? It's like, oh, I want to get up on Saturday morning and look back over the week and think how much I got done. Yeah. And so what we do is we invite 40, 50, 60 people in at a time, and we pair them during the interview with another candidate, and then we give you the weirdest instructions ever. Your job is to get the person sitting next to you a second interview. Help your pair partner succeed. What we are looking for first and foremost in this first interview are good kindergarten skills. Do you play well with others? Do you not hit, bite, scratch, swear, run through the room with scissors over your head, right? 20 minutes, we're going to have you work sharing a single piece of paper and a single pencil, and your job is to help the person sitting next to you succeed. If you know the answer, give it to them. If she's struggling, help her out. If you sense unease and anxiety, see if you can calm her down. One of my team members will be sitting across from the two of you, simply taking notes about what they see. 20 minutes in, we switch the pairs because this is the way we work. Then we do it one more time, then we send you all home. The first interview of 40, 50, 60 people took 2 hours. You know, most organizations lament that they can't find talent and that sort of thing, and we have never had trouble finding talent. I think the talent equation problem isn't that you can't find the talent, it's that your darn HR practices are too slow. We interview all of you, and the only decision we're trying to make is, do we invite you back in for a second interview? Second interview, come in on your own, by yourself, pair in the morning with one Menlonian, pair in the afternoon with another one, go out with a few team members, and now we'll get a chance both for you to see what it's like to work for us, as well as us to start to see what skills do you have that you could bring to the table. And if that works, then we invite you in it's a paid day, and then we invite you in for a paid 3-week trial where you'll pair with at least 3 different people over the course of the week. So usually at the end of 3 weeks, we have a pretty good sense, as do you, how this is going to work, and then we make a decision. Yes? Yeah, I would say out of the 50, it'll winnow quickly down to 25, typically. The 25 on the one-day trial will go 25 down to about 12, and the 12 will go from 12 to about 6, 7, or 8. So out of 50 people, we'll get 8 good candidates. And even that success isn't perfect. We'll still have people who in the long run don't work out, but it's just better than anything I've ever seen.
Richard, your business retention is a very difficult challenge. How does that type of approach?
Yeah, our attrition rate is probably standard. We don't, but part of it is we don't try and artificially hang on to people. And because a lot of companies get trapped by this, the tower of knowledge, the person who's everything in their heads is about to walk out the door, so we throw a lot of money at them, but that produces bitterness in all directions, even for the person ultimately who got the big raise. Because at a certain point after 2 or 3 of those, they're trapped inside the organization because they can't get a job of equal pay somewhere else, and now they're just bitter because they can't move and they're stuck in place. Our real strategy is 2 things. Don't build towers of knowledge. By pairing and switching the pairs, we don't build a singular dependence on an individual. That's positive stability inside the organization. And secondly, if you choose to leave, we embrace it, but we also choose to embrace it if you come back. So we have boomerangs. So it's kind of weird to measure attrition at Menlo because I could point out a half a dozen people who left and then came back. And I will tell you, virtually every time somebody left and came back, they come back a better employee. Simply because some of them come and plead and don't ever let me do that again. It's just as scary out there as you said it was. We get a lot of kids right out of college. People often ask us where we recruit, and I tell them people regularly send us their children. Some of you will do that. My cards are over there if you want me to send me your child. I often see parents who come on a tour and they're like, it's too late for my career, but please save my child. It's like a scene on the Titanic, It's like, I've had a good life, but save my child, right? One of my favorite versions of that is Rob. His dad came in as CEO of a tier 1 automotive supplier, $500 million a year, went home that night, told his kid, you want to work for this guy? And later I asked Rob, I said, did you have a job? He goes, oh yeah. I said, where are you working? He says, I was working for my dad's company. So his dad went home, you don't want to work for me anymore, son, you want to work for this guy. And so it's fun, but yeah, standard attrition. People leave for a whole bunch of different reasons. It's not perfect, and it's not, we're very passionate, but we're not perfect. Yes?
Wow, can you hear me? Okay. So this is a little odd. I went to the University of Michigan School of Information and got a degree in HCI.
Yes.
And actually applied for your job in 2006 and went through your interview process and didn't get it, which was fine.
See, I told you it's not perfect. Why wouldn't we? Yeah.
It was pretty interesting. So what you really are talking about is the hyper-iterative software development life cycle.
Yep.
I went on after failing with you to work at big Silicon Valley companies where it was all about the ethnographic approach to software design, making sure you work with end users and end customers and come up with software that delights the end user. Then I was recruited back into family business in Chicago into publishing, and I couldn't afford any of that. Custom software design.
Oh, it does. It's very expensive. Yep.
People in my position, CEO of mid-sized companies, they find themselves choosing between rickety old ERPs. Every single one of them we know is going to be an 80% fit or even worse and come with years and years of firefighting.
Yes. This is why I wanted to apologize on behalf of my whole industry earlier. Yeah.
Well, what's your answer to that? In a way, you're talking all about how great your methodology is, and it truly is great, but it's also cost prohibitive. I don't know how, in the end, it kind of broke my heart that I couldn't apply more of what I learned in graduate school and in the fancier parts of industry to publishing, where there's not enough money, where the ERP solution, the off-the-rack solution doesn't quite fit.
Yeah. Yes, I agree, and there is no easy answer for the 2 reasons you point out. If you buy the packaged software, you often have to twist the needs of the business to meet the needs of the software. And a lot of software sales guys are trying to coach you on, there's 1,000 features in here. I know you only need 10 of them, but there's 990 you can grow into, but you can't find the 10 you need amongst the 990. And so you get frustrated with it, right? And so we actually advocate, and maybe this would work for you, that you design the ideal experience with the ethnographic approach, and then use that design to vet the software products, because typically you get bought into SAP, PeopleSoft, or Bond, or any of those big packages, you're going to get, look, their job is to sell as many of these as they can without modifications at all. And if you suggest a modification to them, it'll come 2 years down the road. And so then you end up customizing these packages for your needs. And that's where a lot of the bugs come in, because it's often very difficult to, am I getting you depressed about my industry? But the point is, I would say for the processes within your organization where you're not trying to differentiate, the standard packages can work well. I would use your best business brain and say, what are the things inside of organization that are really near and dear to us that allow us to differentiate in the marketplace and delight our users? And if you're going to customize anything, customize them around that. But yeah, I wish there was an easy answer. There isn't. For the same $100,000, yeah, I know it's not